Welcome to what's left of Horsley Hall. There's not a lot left. Most of it was demolished in 1963. Bits are up there and there is rubble everywhere. But this is one of my favourite bits, which is the walled garden. I've walked through many times, but a few weeks ago I decided to scrape back some of the soil and discover this bit of a pathway. So I've been back today with a shovel and a few other bits. Obviously realise it's a bit of a tough job to do because, as you can see, there is so much vegetation here and ivy and root systems and all sorts going on. But as you can see, I've given it a fair go. I could do with a brush, but there is a natural pathway, so you can find your way through it anyway. As you can see, I've been able to scrape a bit more away as I've gone. Bear me a second, little legs going over. But when you get to this part here, as you can see, it's all overgrown with relatively young trees and you really can't get anything out of it. So, but this is the pathway anyway, and underneath all that vegetation is basically remnants of the hall. There are huge bits of masonry everywhere, there's bricks everywhere. I mean, if somebody actually gathered it all up, you could probably build half the hall again. You know, because it costs a lot of money, but you know, you could do that. So I've got a little bit further, bits of rock here, and then we get to the edge, and there's the end of it here. Now this was a beautiful landscape garden. It is technically classed as grade 2, would you believe? Grade 2 listed garden. Not that you'd believe it now because, well, as you can see, the Japanese knotweed has gone ballistic down here. Now the last owner, which was Lord Wavertree, who sadly passed away in 1933, hailed from Liverpool area, hence Lord Wavertree, and the Walker family, who were famous for brewing, but his side of it, he was a really famous horse breeder, and he had a big stables over in Ireland. And when he was over in Ireland, he actually brought a Japanese botanist over to create a garden over there. And I presume when he moved here and created a bit more of the garden, well, this is the result. Because nobody knew in the 1900s that Japanese knotweed was so invasive. Looks quite pretty, you know, you've got these heart-shaped leaves, and the stems are quite pretty, they're hollow, but it's just incredibly invasive, and it's everywhere here. Luckily it does stop a bit further because there's an ornate lily pond further down, but all this here, it's just, yeah, it's a bit hideous really. So you've got little blocks here and blocks there. Now it's hard to imagine, so bear with me, that would have been a staircase behind here and another staircase going down into what was a tiered garden, and further on there is an ornate, well, was an ornate, now has got trees growing in the middle of it, beautiful lily pond. There is a lake sort of behind it, there is a rockery, and it is rocks, it's not just little pebbles that we would use in our garden. They are bigger than me and I'm 5'2", so it is a proper rock garden, and it goes on for acres and acres and acres. There are disused barracks all going to pot because the army took over it in 33 because nobody actually wanted the building. They sold off the farmland, so there's farms, all the farms in the area, which is Horsley, Marford, Rossett, sort of all that sort of area really, were part of the Horsley Hall estate. They all got sold off, but nobody wanted the hall. It was deemed as just too big to look after, and at its heyday, it had 20 bedrooms, it had a saloon, it had a golf course apparently, stables enough for 12 horses. So you can imagine the size of it. So the army took over the base and were here for quite a while. It was Pioneer Corps. Then later on the Wrens were here shortly, for a little short while. In fact, that's what my dad told me about. He can remember it because he used to live further at Marford Hill and came down here as a young boy. So he told me bits and pieces about it, but sadly I can't ask him anymore because he's not with us anymore. But we both had a fondness of this place, and I used to come down here as a teenager with my friends and do what teenage people do, and because it was a wooded area and no adults, you know, so you had fun, you could wander around and do whatever you wanted down here. It was great. And yes, it is private land, before anybody tells me off. I know it's private land, but I can't imagine that the person who owns it at the moment is overly concerned about it, because why would you leave it like this? I believe they tried to get planning permission and it was denied, which is understandable really, because there's a lot of historical interest here. Yes, it would take a lot of work. You know, the Forestry Commission are in charge of the other side of the estate, which was where the barracks are. Obviously, you can still get down there. They're all a bit ruined and stuff now. And there is a massive marching square, which is rather curious to sort of go through it. And you find yourself walking through a wooded area, and then all of a sudden you come across this huge marching square. It is rather extraordinary. But I come down here every sort of week or so and have a wander, because you can just get lost down here in a really nice way. There's lots of birds tweeting, lots of rooks and all sorts of. In fact, I've heard of woodpecker, not today, but there's been all sorts down here. It's been rather lovely. So I've just been pottering around and seeing what I can find, and keeping myself out of mischief, I suppose. You know, as we all found in lockdown, gardening and being with nature is actually quite good for your mental health. And I like wandering anyway. And it's been quite nice rediscovering this. Like I say, I used to come down here a lot when I was a teenager. And I took photographs when it was early 90s, I think it was 1992. And I found them recently, and you go, oh my word. Yeah, nature has really reclaimed this area, because some of it is completely unrecognised. When I first came down in March, I had to sort of reacquaint myself. I think, well, why don't I recognise it? I thought, well, you haven't been down here for over 30 years, so that's why you don't recognise parts of it. But as you can see, it's a huge forest, but it's beautiful down here. I am going to take some more videos and whack them on YouTube. Obviously, you don't have to watch them if you don't want to. That's absolutely fine. But it's just something to put them so people can see what is down here. And I don't know, maybe think about doing something with it. Obviously, you can't rebuild the hall. That would be ridiculous, and it would take millions to do that. But you could rescue the gardens and landscape them again. Or not landscape them, the landscape's already here. It just needs seriously cutting back, chainsaws, etc., and bring it back to life. And then people can still enjoy it. You know, it was landscaped for a long time, and it's still here. It just needs a lot of love, as we all do. But never mind. It's gorgeous to come down here anyway. So I'm having a little pootle and seeing what I can find when I come down here. Obviously, I've got old photographs at home, and you're trying to sort of marry up what you see down here to the original photograph, and you go, it's really difficult to get your head around it, because you've gone from a gorgeous, majestic country manor to, wow, this. Not a lot, and a lot of, well, let's say rubble. And there's masonry everywhere. There's a few windows scattered everywhere. I know the army built lots of bits and pieces. You know, there's remnants of Nissan huts here. Yeah, there's all sorts down here. So it's a real sort of adventure for anybody to wander down here. Obviously, you need decent boots. I've got my trusty Doc Martens on. Yeah, it's not for the foolhardy, because there's some bits which are very squelchy, certainly by the pond areas. But it's very beautiful. It's really nice to come and have a wander. And I'll pop down later, obviously not today, with a brush and possibly with something, not a chainsaw. I have got a chainsaw, but I'm not going to bring that down. But I have got an implement that might be able to cut through some of the bigger root system here, just so I can get underneath, because it's so much fibrous matter. But you can see this beautiful herringboning all the way down, and it'd just be nice to expose it. So if anybody is pottering through, they go, oh look, lovely pathway. Okay, bye for now.